rising, time to grow. Small steps leading where you wanna go. Trials and fire, but you're still here. Stronger now after all these years. Learning, growing, healing, thriving. One step closer, keep on striving. Liberate your awesome, one step at a time. Every ripple starts so small, but it changes everything after all. One small move, one bold leap. This is the moment, go make it deep. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Welcome to Liberate Your Awesome with Annah Kate. I am your transformation trainer, and today I have a special guest, Ada Lloyd, and she is going to share her incredible story of overcoming that she got shoved into as a kid that when she didn't have a choice. So she has done the work, and I want to hope to give you hope in her story as we move forward and uncover all the things that Ada has to share with us. So welcome, Ada.
Thanks so much. It is a pleasure to be with you. And I love what you said in your introduction about hope, because I think that is the power of it is so underestimated.
And it is so lost when when you're in the moment and you have everything piling on top of you and you feel like you're alone. I promise there is someone else that has walked before you, even a couple of steps. So that's what this community is all about. So being those helping hands and shedding light, and even if it's just a small flicker, that hope is there and there is a solution and there is a way forward, even when you feel like you can't see it. So let's dive in to Ada's story. So, like I said before, Ada was thrown into chaos by an outside force in her family. So, if this conversation about SA and abuse and a couple of those other things are triggering for you, I hope that you listen for the hope that Ada provides in walking through and how she has helped others overcome and walk through this unfortunate event that happened in her life. So there is hope. So I hope it's not too triggering that you get to go through. So Ada, tell us where and when kind of that curveball was thrown at you and life just felt overwhelming, you're you just can't get through it.
When I was growing up, I was abused by my father, and it involved SA. And as a kid, when something happens that doesn't feel right, you feel like you're the only one, especially if you don't know that anybody else is experiencing it. And back at that time, it wasn't on the public radar. Nobody talked about it. And so you feel like there's something wrong with you. And I tried to reach out. I tried to do a couple of things to get me out of the situation or protect me from the situation, and they didn't work. The last one I tried was finally telling my mother after having dropped breadcrumbs and hoping she would ask me questions following the breadcrumbs for years, and it hadn't worked. So I finally told her exactly what had happened. And I really wanted her to put her arms around me and tell me it was all going to be okay, that she was sorry, that she would kick him out, that I would be safe. And instead she said, "Your father really didn't do anything. He just wanted to be close to you." And I told her very graphically what he had done. I was 14. I just turned 15. But she couldn't hear me. And unfortunately, that is so often the case. When a child reaches out, it's denied, it's diminished. And so while they're already feeling devalued because of what they've experienced, this reaction devalues us even more. Now, I was fortunate because I was ahead in school, and that was my method to run away in a socially acceptable way. I got myself on a college campus 1 month after my 16th birthday. It was 2,500 miles from home, so I had physical safety, but I took all the emotional crap with me.
Right.
And carried it quietly year after year. Now, again, I was very fortunate because a few years later, I received a life-altering epiphany that said, You are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life. Now, there were no books, there were no therapists, there certainly was no internet. And so the only thing that I could find was the self-help arena. And so I jumped into that and I tried a bunch of different pieces. And if it felt like it helped, I kept it. And if it didn't, I tossed it and looked for another piece. Now, after several years, I had a basket full of pieces, but they weren't connected.
Yeah.
And it was time for me to start connecting them. And that was a process that I began working on. And here's the thing that I can't overstate, and that's the power of hope. And I told you about the life altering epiphany I had a couple of minutes ago. Along with that, I came across a quote from Stephen Covey, and he said, I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions. We all have circumstances that were never on our bucket list.
Right.
Some of them are incredibly painful. Some like mine, some worse, some not as bad. But it doesn't matter where on the continuum they are. What matters is what we choose to do about them.
Mhm. So I have a question. Your mom was probably trauma bonded herself, which is why she could not see how to help you or was in denial that no way that my husband would do this to my daughter and just complete self-denial. Did you work through this with your mother as an adult? Did you get that opportunity?
You know, my mother was I'm the very beginning of the post-war baby boom. So my mother age-wise was almost more like my grandmother than my
Mhm.
mother. And I actually I worked with different therapists for short periods of time, never for a long time because I got frustrated because they'd want to go around and around and around in a circle. But from each one, I picked up something that was helpful to me. And one of the last ones that I saw really wanted me to confront my mother. And basically, I had done that years before, and she had told me that no, I had never told her that.
Mm.
And she still had a hard time dealing with it. And I knew that, at this point, she was pushing 80. And I knew that there was nothing to be gained by it.
Yeah.
But um, I did have an interesting experience that isn't directly on point. But I asked some questions one time when she was with her twin brother. And I asked about something that I was pretty sure he did not know that she had hidden about their family. And when I asked about it in the context of some family history that I was working on and a place that I knew they had lived when they were children, he absolutely exploded.
Mm.
And you could see mom cowering. And he said, why is it that whenever there's anything you don't like, you try to shove it in a closet? And I believe that my mother was sexually abused as a child.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oops, which
I
goes
believe
to,
my mother experienced SA as a child.
yeah.
And that was why she couldn't maybe even acknowledge that to herself,
Hmm.
let alone acknowledge that I had experienced the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, the body and the brain are so incredibly good at protecting us from things that we have no control over, which is why our decisions make our future, not our current circumstances. Like you quoted Stephen Covey, but we also have to be able to address them, to release them and work through it because keeping that trauma inside is toxic on so many levels and trying to deal with that.
It's interesting that I brought this up about my mother and her twin brother, because one of the things that I talk about are our natural tendency to shove things that we don't like in a closet, lock the door, put chains around it, and pretend that it doesn't exist. But that's as effective as trying to lock smoke in a closet
Yep.
and pretend that it doesn't exist.
That skeleton
It
starts to
just seep
stink after a
out.
while.
You know, you can't keep the smoke contained in the closet. And so when we have childhood trauma, it shows up in so many different ways in adulthood. It can show up as the imposter syndrome. It can show up as guilt, as loneliness, as depression, as anxiety, as addiction, fear of abandonment, fear of a judgment. The list is really huge.
Mhm.
And we tend to look at these things and we want to treat them. But it's like saying you've got a really bad headache and you take Tylenol and it just doesn't begin to touch it. And after 3 days, you can't get rid of this headache. You've tried everything you could. You finally get an appointment with your doctor. He runs some tests and he comes back and tells you you've got a brain tumor. Do you want him to deal with the headache or do you want him to deal with the brain tumor? I don't know about you, but I want him to deal with the brain tumor.
Yep.
And so it is. All of these things I just listed are symptoms just like the headache.
Mhm.
The underlying disease is that childhood trauma. The best example of this is with addiction. Because when a child is in pain and they don't know what to do, they just want it to go away. There's nothing there to help them. They're just desperate to get relief from the pain. And so if dad has a booze cabinet, if mom has prescription pills, there's always the refrigerator. They're looking for anesthesia for pain.
Mhm.
And what they choose, it helps. So the next time they're in pain, well, it helped here. Let me try it here. And it works again. And then it becomes a way of dealing with stress. And then it becomes a habit. And then it becomes an addiction. And then they go to an addiction recovery program. And they come out and they say, let's use the example of alcohol. I'm never going to take another drink. I finally beaten it. And the numbers tell you that a year later, they will either be back drinking or they will have traded it for another addiction, like perhaps gambling.
Mhm.
It is only when the underlying disease is healed that then symptoms frequently go away on their own, or they're able to be much more successfully treated.
Right. We don't need a Band-Aid. We need a solution to the underlying problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me as a chronic illness warrior and navigator, like I have so many things. So if you've listened to my other stories and heard about my story that, you know, the 18 co-infections and the lupus and the blood disorder and all of these things, like lupus isn't going to go away. I have to treat those symptoms. But I made Lyme disease go away. I made lots of my co-infections go away. So there is that solution. And one of the things that is so incredible about you, Liberator, is that you will do the things to find the solution. You keep fighting for yourself. My mom called me a bulldog with lipstick because I would just not take no for an answer of I knew something was wrong in my body. I knew I needed a different solution. So I kept pushing and chasing for it. And that's part of my story of the persistent consistency in lots of areas of my life. And that's one of those things that you can't just settle for the Band-Aid. Don't settle for the Band-Aid. I know it feels good in the moment, but it is not a long-term solution. So if you break your
I,
arm, you got to put it in a cast and you got to mobilize it. Putting a Band-Aid on it's not going to do anything. So
I love your mom's description about a bulldog with lipstick.
Are you a biotinker wellness enthusiast seeking a blueprint for sustainable physical mastery? Look no further. Our exclusive evidence-based program will revolutionize your health, performance, and your relationship with food. The 12-week Intentional Body Project is designed for individuals who demand excellence and are committed to transformation. Throughout this journey, you'll gain science-backed knowledge, debunk fat loss myths, and understand the physiology behind sustainable results. An unstoppable metabolism. Optimize your body's natural fat-burning abilities to turn your physique into a powerhouse. Build intentional nutrition mastery. Develop a flexible, effective approach to eating that fuels your success and fits seamlessly into your busy lifestyle. Nothing is off limits. Build an unshakable resilience. Conquer stress, optimize recovery, and build a foundation for peak performance. And as always, a lasting transformation. Achieve a strong, vibrant body that supports your highest ambitions and lasts a lifetime. Don't settle for fleeting trends or empty promises. Take control of your health with the Intentional Body Project. Spaces are limited to ensure personal attention and maximum results. Apply now to become the embodiment of strength, vitality, and unwavering health.
Just getting after it, like a dog after a bone. If no one was going to advocate for me, my parents were great. They helped me and did all the things to support me, but I was the one that knew my body. I was the one that was dealing with what I was dealing with and trying to explain this medical mystery. Like, I walked out of the hospital with 18 co-infections. And then the next 6 years of my life was trying to figure out what happened, what it is that I got, right? So, and then dealing with the blood disorder and the lupus on top of that, and all the symptoms are very much the same, but they're totally different, and all of the things. And having someone that will listen to you and take you seriously with your concerns is fundamental in moving towards that hope and finding the solution. So I hope that you, Liberator, are hearing what we are saying.
You know, I love one of the things that you just said about being heard. Because when there is trauma, okay, I've got a friend, and she grew up being abused by her brother, and she's in her 50s now. She won't come to me because she's a friend, and, heaven forbid I should judge her, even though I deal with stuff like hers all the time, and it's, I don't talk.
It's the same reason why you fold your underwear and hide it in your pants when you go to the gynecologist. It's the same thing. Some things you just have to do.
There's a family situation coming up where there'll be a family together, and she's real uncomfortable because her brother's going to be there. And, she said something to her mother, and her mother said, "It was all these years ago. Get over it. It's not that big of a deal." She has never been heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the gift that I think, for me to give a client, it's a no-brainer. They're going to be heard. It's going to be a safe place. But as friends, as people that we encounter that are carrying different burdens, things that maybe we can understand because we've experienced something similar, maybe we can't understand really. We can try to, but it's so far out of our comfort zone and our life experience that we really don't have the perspective to be able to understand it. We can still hear people.
Mm-hmm.
We can still allow them to feel like they matter enough for us to hear not just their words,
Yes,
but their feelings.
Absolutely. And it is so hard going through things and feeling alone and feeling like your family doesn't understand you, the people that are supposed to know you the best, and struggling
And
with,
supposed to love you.
yes, and be the one. I mean, it's your meanest to the people that you love the most, right? Because you feel safe to dump things on them and kind of snap back a little bit. Sometimes we get a little spicy, but we know that they're not going to go anywhere, which is why we do that. And then we repair that relationship and move forward and grow and do all the things. So I hope that you listening will reach out to Ada if you want to share your story in a safe place and feel heard and understood, or reach out to a friend and say, "Hey, I need to share something with you. I just need you to listen. I don't need you to solve the problem, but I need to do this in a safe place because I haven't done it before. I just need that safe place." And you will have those friends. Ada, have you heard of 8-minute friends? Do you know what an 8-minute
No, I haven't.
So when you are going through something and your heart is racing and your blood pressure is up and you're really stressed about something, there are a few friends that I will text and say, "I need 8 minutes." because 8 minutes when you talk to someone is enough to bring you off of that edge. It's enough to just feel heard and feel that someone is carrying this with you, and it helps reduce your cortisol and your adrenaline, but just having that friend of someone that, hey, I need 8 minutes. And I have several friends that I can do that with, and they don't have to talk to me right then in that moment, but they know that it's important and they will give me a call and we will sort it out. I'm a verbal processor. Um, so my husband gets a little frustrated because I say the same thing over and over until I get it right, until I figure it out. But having that 8 minute friend is so important, just to be able to, hey, somebody sent me a crazy email in the office and I'm just about had it up to here with them. Like, I just need to vent it out and put it on paper. Like, you can write it down. Just get it out of your system so you can process it. And doing that with an 8 minute friend is always a banger way to go.
You said something else that I think is really really significant. You said just write it down. There is something that is different between a thought going from your head or your heart down your arm, out your hand, and onto paper that doesn't happen when you do it on a computer.
Yes.
And so when I'm working with people, there's information I give them, questions I ask them, and this is just for them. They don't have to share it with me or anybody else. It's just for them. But I stress the importance of writing it by hand because insights and understanding come out without our conscious awareness when we put things on paper. And then we can look at it and say, oh, that's why, or now I understand, or that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Writing, old school by hand,
Yep.
is a great tool.
Yeah, that stream of consciousness can come out in a way of just sitting down and writing all your thoughts down, especially if they are those thoughts that repeat and you know it's the enemy trying to talk down to you, or you know that it's not a truth. So one of the exercises that is absolutely fantastic is to write the lie in pencil. You're still writing it out. You write the lie in pencil, and then you write the truth in pen, right? And then you can go and erase the lie. So doing that is a physical representation of physical modality to change your thought process. And doing that over a consistent amount of time helps you up level your thoughts. So if you are stuck in that negative loop, that's one of the ways that you can kind of get out of that and get it on paper and get it out, just get it out of your system, and then shake and go stick your feet in the grass.
Another way to do that is what I call my yellow pad strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you've got a question. So for me, this first came with, why are you so vulnerable to rejection? And so at the top of the page, I wrote, why am I so vulnerable to rejection? I was seeing it come up in all sorts of places that I knew I was overreacting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you do this, it can only be one question. And the first 2, 3, 4 things that come up, you're going to go, oh, that's stupid. That's crazy. Don't edit, just write.
Yep.
Someplace around number 4 or 5, your brain's going to go, bingo, that's it. And in my case, it was, you view your father's choice to abuse you as the ultimate paternal rejection.
Mm.
The next line was, you view your mother's denial as the ultimate maternal rejection. You choose Max's choice to get a divorce as the ultimate rejection by a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
You choose Liz's, she was making horrible life choices at the time. You view Liz's choices as the ultimate rejection of you as a mother. Think you've got an issue about rejection?
I think so. And none of that was your fault. None of it.
That allowed me to understand why I was so vulnerable to feeling rejected and to create a strategy to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And just asking yourself a simple question when there's something you don't understand. opens all sorts of doors.
Mhm. And it's also great if you don't know the answer to a question to write it down before bed and let your subconscious work on it overnight because your brain likes to solve problems. Like it is hardwired to do that. So if you ask it a question or you want to know how to do something, it will figure out how to do it. It will show you when you ask the questions, it's like getting a new car. Like you never see that car around until you get that car or you start looking at that car and then you see it everywhere, right? It's that point of focus that we have. So I have another question for you. These are not any questions I've written down, so we're gonna go with it. Did or do Max and Liz have a great relationship?
She was always her father's, daughter. I mean, one time when she was 2, he swatted her bottom over something, which I don't think he had ever done. And she starts toddling across the room towards me, crying, turns around and goes back to him. She was a daddy's girl. But one of the reasons that he decided that he wanted a divorce was I couldn't stop trying to help her.
Yeah,
And he was weary of trying things that failed.
yep, I get that. And you can want to help people all that you want to, but until they want to help themselves, it's like pushing a noodle on up against a wall, brick wall, and hoping the wall falls down, and it never does.
And she's in a much better place today. She's still dealing with some of the consequences of some of the choices that she made earlier in life, but she has a good relationship with both her father and with me.
Good,
And I think they're different, but I think they're pretty comparable relationships.
good. I'm glad that you broke the emotional chain because you are the emotional chain breaker, and that
Yeah.
you did not let that continue in Liz's generation, that you had made
Well,
those choices.
because we know that abuse is generational.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm so passionate is to heal the person who was abused so that we can break the chain
Hmm.
and it doesn't go on to another generation.
Absolutely. And I love that you help people build that skill set because it's a process, right?
Well, here's the process that we go through that is really different than anything I know anybody else does. And I've seen it create miracles in people's lives. Is we start by identifying what they experienced, which is just, a little tidbit, and then we go on to feelings because that's what drives everything.
Hmm.
And it's about owning your story, which is what happened to you, how you felt about it then, how you feel about it now, and how you feel about the things that were said to you. Not what was said to you, because that was a lie,
Hmm.
but how you feel about it. And then we start to separate abusers and enablers' story from your story. And the first reaction is, well, I don't really know that much. The reality is, you know more than you think you know. And it's like putting together a puzzle. You get close to the puzzle being done and you're missing a few pieces. You have a pretty good idea of what that puzzle looks like. And when we start to look at what was going on in their lives at the time they chose to abuse or bully or enable, your abuse,
Hmm.
you know more than you think you know, and you know enough to understand that it was always about them.
Yes.
It was never about you. And with that understanding, we can break the chains.
Yes. What an epiphany to be able to come to go from being a victim and blaming yourself because at 14 you didn't know. I mean, how do you deal with something? I mean, there are adults that aren't fully equipped to deal with things, right? Which is why that abuse cycle starts is because they're not addressing what they need to address,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I can't imagine. I have an incredible relationship with both my mother and father, and I am such a daddy's girl. I like my dad is my best friend. My mom's my best friend too. But my dad has always been a direct representation of my relationship with my Heavenly Father. I think of that as a very personal father-daughter relationship. So I cannot even wrap my head around or putting myself in your shoes and having experienced that of the man that's supposed to love me the way my dad loves me and the way my Heavenly Father loves me. It just like it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind that I can't wrap my head around that.
For years, that was a huge disconnect for me because I had difficulty trusting my Heavenly Father because he was a man,
Hmm.
because I couldn't trust my father. And I had that flipped. It wasn't until I was able to flip that my Heavenly Father was the perfect representation of a man
Hmm.
and of a man's love. And my father was an imperfect representation. And that was actually part of the last piece of my healing was being able to make that flip.
I'm so glad you went on that journey and made that connection because there are times that I will get overwhelmed. I remember I had eye surgery when I was a little kid. Like I was in kindergarten, so I was like 6 years old. So I had surgery on the muscles of my eyes. So as soon as I woke up, all I wanted was my daddy. And I remember they could not get the IV out of the back of my hand fast enough so my daddy could hold me. And he walked me up and down the hallway. And so now, whenever I get overwhelmed, he's usually one of the first people that I call. He's always gives me great advice and he always tells me like straight truth, not what I need to hear, but not what I want to hear, but what I need to hear,
What
right?
you need.
Yeah, so
What a wonderful gift for you.
it is absolutely
Have,
wonderful.
you know, to have that in your, it's interesting because when I start working with somebody and their countenance is tight and it's dark and there's so much pain that's just radiating from them. I mean, there may be a mask out there that says, I'm competent, I'm capable. Hey, I had that mask out there for years. I know it
Yeah.
well. But then as they break the chains and to see the change in their countenance and for it to go to light
Hmm.
and joyful, that absolutely means the world to me.
And it is possible. It is totally possible. When I get overwhelmed, I'm always raising my right hand and holding on to God's hand and saying, "Look, Dad, I can't deal with it. I'm gonna go take a nap and eat a snack. You handle this." Like totally, that is my mantra in life is take a nap, eat a snack, and let God handle it. Like I need to put that on a t-shirt. So it is one of those things because I can't control it all. I can't control other people. I can only control how I feel and the emotions that I attach to things. And looking through my lens is my lens dirty where I'm projecting things on people that don't need to be projected on? And, we've always heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. And people are always looking out for themselves. And I always just wish people would just do the right thing. If we were all just kind and we all just did the right thing and did what we said that we would do and we were people of integrity, the world would be a much better place. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
All right, I've got another question for you. So, looking back on your childhood, about your when you went to school at 16, you had the drive to get out of there and not wait till you were 18, not stick around. What gave you the strength and the clarity that that was the right move for you is to physically protect yourself if you couldn't emotionally?
So I was already ahead in school. So, and I already had an application in to that school for September. And it was just a matter of when my mother told me what she did, I emotionally buried my mother that day. And my mind immediately said, okay, You're on your own figuring this out. How do you get out of here? Plan A failed, plan B failed, plan C, it's up to you. And so what I realized is that I only had 3 classes I needed to take to graduate from high school. And I could take all 3 of those classes fall semester.
Right.
So that's what I did. And I contacted the school and arranged to be admitted in January rather than the following September. So it was basically accelerating something that was already in place.
Mhm. And what did you study in school? Were you studying what you're doing now? What? No, she's laughing. She is so
I was
laughing at
an
me.
anomaly. I had a double major.
Yeah.
I was in clothing and textiles because I loved fashion and design. And I was also a business management major. And back in those days, you did not see women in business management classes.
Yeah.
So I was a real experience for my professors. And I was a real experience for the chairman of the clothing and textiles department because she couldn't figure out what to do with me and why I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
You're just paving your own way over there, Ada. Ada and I are both from the 1900s, so we've seen some stuff. I love to say that now. I love to say that I'm from the 1900s because when I think of the 1900s, I think of like 1910, 1920, 1930, right? That's what I think of. And I still think that 1970 was 30 years ago, not 50 years ago, 55 years ago. So I am right there. But we have seen some stuff. So just keep that in mind. Um, so moving forward onto your life, you've gone to college, you're starting to do your life. When did you realize that experiencing the shift that shifted your understanding for your own healing journey to be able to share that journey and help others? What did that season of life look like?
So one Monday evening, I got a phone call from the leader of my local church congregation. And he said, "Will you speak in church on Sunday?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm thinking faith, hope, charity. And then he said, at this point, I'm divorced with my own business and a daughter making horrible life choices. He said, "You have more stress in your life than most people do, and you seem to deal with it better than most people do. I want you to speak about dealing with stress from a gospel perspective." And at that moment, my heart went, oh, because I knew I was going to need to make reference to the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it still is not on the public radar. So at that point, I went and found my 2 younger daughters and I said, "Frank called and asked me to speak in church on Sunday." And they rolled their eyes and said, "So what else is new?" And I said, "I feel like I'm going to need to make reference to my abuse. How do you feel about that?" Now, they knew about the abuse, but obviously no details. And to their credit, they said, "We're good with that, Mom." And so on Sunday, as I began to speak, I talked about the abuse or the stress that we all experience on a daily basis. The guy that flips you off on the freeway, the
Mm-hmm.
boss that's nagging you about who knows whatever, the teenager that's rolling their eyes at you. And I said, but we also all have uncommon stresses, things like divorce, delinquent kids, having been sexually abused as a child, financial struggles, health struggles. I've experienced all of these, and these are the strategies that I have used to deal with them. That was my only reference to the abuse. Afterwards, I had 3 women come up to me. 2 of them individually, amidst their tears, laid their head on my shoulders and whispered. I thought I was the only one. The third one just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And she was incapable of speaking. But I knew, and she knew that I knew.
Yeah.
And that was the day that I knew that even though my healing was not yet complete, I had an obligation to reach back and light a path forward for those who did not yet know it was possible. And so over the next several years, amidst raising my kids and running my business, I would do that whenever the opportunity arose. And then in 1990, it was time for me to shut down my design business. And I knew that I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And I knew that before I was ready to really do that, there were some questions I still needed to answer for me.
Mhm.
And so at that time, I created the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life. And those are personal, your relationship with yourself, physical, everything about your health and your body, emotional, which is largely about resiliency, spiritual, however you define spiritual, professional, whatever brings money into the household, financial, which is largely about stability and goals, and then relationships of all kinds. And when you know what success looks like to you, not society, not mom and dad, not anybody else, when you know what success looks like to you in each of those areas, you can weave them together to create your unique definition of success. And then you can use that as a mindful filter to know when to say yes and when to say no. Because most of us say yes, even when we know we should say no.
Right.
And when we say yes too often to other people, we're saying no to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
no to our dreams, no to our promises to ourselves. And then it's also what can help us create long term goals and create a roadmap to get there with incremental goals along the way.
I
And
love
so
that.
when I first started working with people, those were the things I was working with them about. And gradually it became evident that you get to a certain point and something from childhood was creating a block. So I would share more of my story. I did, a lot of research about what the results are from childhood trauma. And then in 2022, I did something really stupid and I tripped over my own 2 feet.
Not you, Ada.
I wound up in the hospital. Fortunately, I didn't break anything.
Good.
When I came home, I had a very clear spiritual prompting that I needed to tear apart everything I had ever done and create something new, taking pieces from different places, bringing in some other things. And I very clearly felt the hand of God in the process of doing that. And then as I began to use that with people, I saw miracles happening in people's lives. And I knew that it had a capacity beyond anything I had imagined. And then in 2023, I was really excited about what I could do with this. And I wound up in and out of the hospital 7 times, in and out of extended care 7 times.
Are you turning into an overachiever like me? Don't. It's not the overachiever status that you want.
On October 23rd of 2023, I was told I had 2 days to live. Now, fortunately, the doctors were wrong, but I truly feel that one of the reasons my life was spared
Oh,
was so that I could help people,
I love it.
because I don't want to see anyone living in pain when
Oh,
I know there's an option.
yeah. Given that hope, and I like your 7 pillars. It's like creating a manifesto for your life of what you stand for and your boundaries and kind of what you want out of your own life and what's successful for you. I love that. I love that personal definition because, with social media, we get caught in this rat race and like, oh, I should be doing this or I should be here or this should be that or all of those things. And we just are bombarded with it all the time. So I hope that you will take a social media break after you watch this video, of course, and like and subscribe and do all the fun things and leave us a comment and let us know if any part of this conversation gave you hope, if someone popped up in your mind when you heard any part of our stories that would benefit, please share this video. And obviously reach out to either one of us. I mean, Ada is great at breaking those chains, so I thoroughly suggest that you work with her. But what is your core message that you hope that liberators will take away when they hear your story? And your advice on facing adversity? Like sum up all that is Ada.
The greatest freedom that any of us have in life is the freedom to choose who we are and who we are becoming. So choose to heal, choose to do whatever it is that you need to do to become that person that maybe feels impossible to become. Know that it's not only possible, but it can become probable, and then it can become real.
Well, that's great advice. Every day is day one. Because we only, if God gave me 2 days at a time, I don't think I could handle it. I like having 1 day at a time. Don't make me have two. So, Miss Ada, how do our liberators connect with you? And where can they find you? And what is new and exciting in the Ada Lloyd world?
So they can find me all sorts of places. They can find me on LinkedIn or YouTube as Ada Lloyd. They can find me on Facebook as Ada G. Lloyd because I got hacked by a very professional hacker a little over a year ago and had to come back, and it's a reinvented version of myself.
Good. I like the reinventions.
What I'm really excited about is I'm very close. My website has not been updated since before I was in the hospital. And I'm very close, like within a week or so, of rolling out a new website that has so many resources in it that are available to help somebody heal, to help somebody find out who they are, to figure out who they want to become, where they want to go. And I would love to have people visit it.
I love it. We'll make sure that it's all linked in the show notes below, so you can just go and click all the places. And please make sure that you follow Ada and make sure that you tap into her resources, and answer the question. Answer the question and make the choice. That's what Ada does and helps you navigate that, and share your story. If you know anyone that has overcome anything and you would like to hear their story on Liberate Your Awesome, please let me know. You can go to my website at annakate.com and click on interview to submit a form. And I would love to share your story. It has been such a wonderful afternoon to spend with you, Miss Ada. I'm so sorry that you had to go through what you went through, but I'm so glad that you did, because you are now a hope dealer of, like, not your fault. Let's work through it and come to the other side, for sure. So, Miss Ada, is there anything else that you would like our liberators to know? Just one little last piece of advice.
Have hope and know that you are worth your dreams.
I love that. Thank you so much, Miss Ada. And until next time, go out and liberate your awesome.
New day rising, time to grow. Small steps leading where you wanna go. Trials and fire, but you're still here. Stronger now after all these years. Learning, growing, healing, thriving. One step closer, keep on striving. Liberate your awesome.